saying, what are you looking so sad about, Jeff?
I'm surprised at you. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting things about. I'm late getting on, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talk about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Ray, one time during my career, I was a bum of my tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
What's happening, my people? It's Cat Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Box Historian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cat Sports, the Box Historian. Today, boxing in Colombia. Boxing in Colombia. Has the family today. Where it's Thursday, we're going to continue our trip around the world. Today it's Colombia. The brief history of boxing in Colombia. We're going to look at some boxers from Colombia. Take a good look at Antonio Cervantes, who was the country's first world champion and thought to be the greatest boxer to come out of Colombia. Okay? And we're going to look at this famous boxing gym down there in Colombia. But all that today on Cat Sports, the Box Story, bringing you all that boxing history. How's everyone today? Getting close to the weekend. It's Thursday. Back close to live boxing again. As I say every day, the countdown to Bud and Canelo has started. Can't wait to see what happens in that one. Fight of the Year? Or will it even be a Fight of the Year candidate? Or will it be a one-sided beatdown by one of them? We gotta see. Okay? Have to see. Tomorrow we're gonna, on the profile, it's gonna be the life and career of John Pascal. And then next week, it's the first Friday of the month. Next week, we're gonna do an active boxer. Gonna be Earl Spence Jr. Earl the Truth Spence Jr., that is. Yeah. But let's get ready to get into our fight of the day to start the show today. Okay? But how's everybody this Thursday afternoon? Getting late in this big week of boxing history. We are pulling right up on another weekend already. Let's look at the fight of the day for today now. Today's fight of the day is Evander Holyfield versus Dwight Muhammad Qawi. July 12th, 1986. Holyfield versus Qawi. July 12th, 1986. All right. Now this was at cruiserweight. Yeah. Qawi did fight at light heavyweight. Light heavyweight at that time was smoking probably the best era of all of light heavyweights ever. You know, the 80s. There's some real killers in there. And Michael Spinks was at the top of the heap. You know, like the heavyweights for the 70s, the 50s for the middleweights. Yeah, the 80s was part of the best decade ever for light heavyweights that I've seen. You know, but this fight here was at cruiserweight. But Qawi was a former light heavyweight champion during that era, okay? Evander Holyfield versus Dwight Muhammad Qawi, July 12th, 1986. Not often do you see fighters who so clearly love the sheer brutality of boxing, the way Dwight Muhammad Qawi once did. Fighters who smile when they take punches. Fighters who literally and figuratively shrug off with a laugh clean shots that are to anyone else anything but a laughing matter. Qawi, formerly Dwight Braxton, perfectly exemplified his moniker of the Camden Buzzsaw, as at only 5'7" tall, he mowed down much bigger men with ruthless efficiency, while exhibiting an unmistakable zeal for combat. Okay, and there's Qawi and Matthew Saad Muhammad. That's who he won his first belt from. I think it was the WBC. He dethroned Saad Muhammad. That was his first title. Okay, and that was at light heavyweight. Qawi's instincts towards war had a well-defined story leading up to his boxing career. Raised on the hard streets of Camden, New Jersey, a 19-year-old Braxton was sent to Rahway State Prison for armed robbery. There, he learned to box under the mentorship of fellow inmate and former light heavyweight contender James Scott. Following his release in 1978, and with no amateur experience, he turned pro. And within just 3 years, the Camden Buzzsaw would take the WBC light heavyweight championship belt from future Hall of Famer Matthew Saad Muhammad. In the process, dishing out a vicious battering to Miracle Matthew. Yeah, the time in prison was his amateur career. What an amateur career Braxton had was the little fighting he did in prison, right? So that made it even more amazing. And within 3 years, he was world champion. Qawi made 3 successful defenses of his title including stoppage wins over Juries of Bull Martin and Eddie Davis, before losing on points to Michael Spinks in a high-profile unification fight. 2 years later, Quawi rebounded by adding a WBA cruiserweight title belt to his dossier. It was called junior heavyweight back then, because it was only a few years old at that time. And as fate would have it, the second defense of his championship came against Olympian and future legend, the real deal, Evander Holyfield. And there is Holyfield. Holyfield turned pro in 1984 with a win over Lionel Bayarn. Yeah, that's his debut fight. He was on that card in 84, Night of Gold. They had 6 former Olympians on that same card at Madison Square Garden and made their pro debut from the 84 Olympic team. Holyfield was one of them. Holyfield didn't get gold, but it was called Night of Gold. I think it was Sweet Pea, Holyfield, Meldrick Taylor, Mark Breland, Tyro Biggs, and one of the brothers, Steve. Can't think of his last name, but yeah, it was Night of Gold. Holyfield was on that card. That was when that fight right there occurred on that card. Okay, he beat Lionel Bayarn for the first win of his career. Now, while Holyfield also faced considerable hardship growing up in the housing projects of southern Atlanta, Evander enjoyed an extensive amateur career that culminated with him representing the United States in the 1984 Olympics. However, he was deprived of his Olympic dreams when he was controversially disqualified for hitting on a break command hardly anyone at ringside even heard. Yeah, and that was bad because the guy he was fighting, the referee was from the same country. That should never happen in the Olympics. No competitor in the Olympics should have a referee from the same country doing their fight. There's enough amateur referees. And back in the 20s, guess what? This guy, the Olympics was in London that year, like 24, something like that. And this one guy won the gold medal. Guess who the referee was? His father. Now that's crazy. It wasn't the United States that was fighting, but whatever country that was, the president of the Olympic Committee should never have allowed that. You know, the guy's father refereeing the gold medal match. He shouldn't referee any match, let alone the gold medal match. And he cheated for him. He made sure his son got the gold medal. Who wouldn't? If my son fighting for the gold medal, you're gonna let me referee, I'm gonna cheat for him too. That's a lifetime achievement, a gold medal. But yeah, that should never happen. But that's what happened to Holyfield. It wasn't the guy's father, but he was from the same country. And yeah, the man let him start his punch, then holler, stop. But he was almost to the man's head, then disqualified him. Crazy. Yeah, but that's what happened. Evander got the silver, or the bronze. I don't know if that was a gold medal match, but he was robbed, right? Now, despite the setback, Evander was still considered among the cream of the crop on a United States Olympic team. It took 9 out of 12 possible gold medals. Now, you got when you say that 9 out of 12 for 84, you have to admit it's an asterisk beside it because the Russians and the Cubans were not there. They boycotted, like the United States boycotted Moscow in 80. The Russians boycotted 84 in LA, and the Cubans didn't come either. So you got to put an asterisk beside that because if the Russians and Cubans had been there in 84, the United States would not have had 9 gold medals. Okay, you can take that to the bank. They probably would have had some, but not 9. Russians and Cubans would have had some of those 9, right? But anyway, they had 9 gold medals. Okay, and Holyfield didn't get a gold medal, but he was still considered part of the cream of the crop on that team. Yeah. And indeed, it was Holyfield in just his second year as a pro who became the first member of that Olympic team to challenge for a world title. Yeah, it was Evander. And there's Evander and Dwight right there. Stuff he's up to fight up today. Now, A Holyfield versus Quarry matchup not only represented a massive leap in class for Evander in just his 12th pro fight, but also an enormous risk for the young prospect, considering Quarry's ruthless approach, strength, and physicality. Holyfield, having never gone past round 8 in his short career, was faced with having to keep at bay a relentless Perry Armstrong type perpetual motion machine for 15 rounds, with only his hometown fans at Atlanta's Omni Arena to support him. Talk about a daunting task, right? Talk about a daunting task. In many ways, Holyfield versus Quarry 1 would prove to be reminiscent of the Thriller in Manila, an Ali versus Frazier type war for the cruiserweight division. Like Joe Frazier, Quarry was at a significant disadvantage in terms of height and reach, and was thus forced to walk through repeated crisp combinations from one of the most accurate sharpshooters in recent boxing history, just to get in the punching range. And Quarry did train at Joe Frazier's gym in Philly, okay? But while Holyfield held clear advantages in terms of youth, size, and natural talent, like Muhammad Ali in Manila a decade before, he was still in tough as he struggled against a determined and teeth-tough warrior who refused to take a backward step, regardless of what the real deal connected with. Yeah, Braxton wasn't going backwards. No, yeah, he was Joe Frazier like. Okay. Mike Rim in the building. What's up, Mike? Evander Holyfield versus the white Muhammad Quarry is the fight of the day today. Okay, let's continue. Yeah, Holyfield was going for that title in only his 12th pro fight. In the first 2 rounds, Evander boxed with discipline and kept Quarry at bay. But his innate warrior mentality got the better of him in the third when he met the champion head on with a barrage of vicious shots. But you knew that was going to happen with Quarry's come forward brawling style and Holyfield's mentality. You knew it was only a matter of time before this turned into a war, right? And it did. The fight evolved into trench warfare as Holyfield connected with the cleaner punches while Quarry got home with the heavier shots. The Camden Buzzsaw was also gripping hurtful blows to Holyfield's body, a smart investment, which would take a toll on the 23-year-old challenger later. Yep. Yeah, Quarry always invested to the body. In round 4, Quarry successfully cornered Holyfield and began to score more regularly, eventually hurting the challenger with a right hand as Evander attempted to pivot off the ropes. For much of the middle rounds, Holyfield's chances of winning his first world title looked increasingly dim. While he was still winning rounds, the challenger seemed to be fighting to reach the finish line, while Quarry appeared to be just getting started. Yeah, those body shots was starting to pay off in the middle rounds. But responding to the urging of his trainer, Lou Duva, Holyfield came alive in round 8 with a sudden burst of energy to put Quarry on the receiving end of at least 12 unanswered punches, and sending a clear message that the challenger had plenty left in the tank. It's amazing to think that in Holyfield's first time being extended past the 8th, he was able to maintain such a hellish pace against a fighter of Quarry's caliber. It appeared as though Holyfield had more energy in the latter rounds than he did in the middle of the fight. Yeah, Holyfield had a great gas tank, though. There he is with his trainer, the great Lou Duva. Yeah, there he is with the great Lou Duva. Round 13 epitomized the reason Ring Magazine would later rank Holyfield versus Quarry as the 46th greatest title fight in the long history of pugilism. The real deal opened it with a full set of punches, which looked like they'd never end. But then Quarry was right on top of him, like a rabid dog, looking to even the score. Holyfield punctuated the round with a picturesque right uppercut, left hook right hand combination that had the champion's head looking like a speed bag, to which Quarry responded by dropping his hands as if to goad Evander further into his masochistic game. How Quarry survived the round is anyone's guess, but sure enough, the Canada boss Buzzsaw showed no reluctance to press the action in the closing 6 minutes. If round 13 was the finale of a truly great fight, round 15 was the encore. Both gladiators laid it all on the line in the final 3 minutes, and after the bell rang, Holyfield was credited with throwing a total of 1,290 punches, with nearly half landing. Quarry scored 55% of his 1,018 punches in his own right, but 2 of the 3 judges gave Holyfield the nod in the Cruiserweight Championship of the World in just his second year as a pro. In any case, the bottom line is that Holyfield versus Quarry is one of the best 15-round fights of recent boxing history. Wow, Quarry landed 55% of his punches and still lost. Soon after the judge's decision was announced, Evander complained of headaches. He was admitted to the hospital, where the new champion was given 9 quarts of intravenous fluid to combat a kidney ailment that stemmed from a state of severe hydration. Probably that body attack Quarry invested in early probably had something to do with it too. Now, years later, Evander claimed to have had lost 15 pounds during the Quarry fight, and that he nearly quit the sport as a result. He said he was going to quit during that fight. And give it to Quarry. And after the fight, he threatened to quit boxing. But he kept going. There's him and Lou Duver again. It was after the final bell of a magnificent war. However, it's not unlike Evander Holyfield to emerge from a life and death ring struggle as a better boxer, as he would later demonstrate by moving up to become heavyweight champion in his famous trilogy against Riddick Bowe in the 1990s. Quarry, on the other hand, would never truly be the same, getting blasted out by Holyfield in 4 rounds in their rematch, and then suffering defeats to George Foreman and Robert Daniels in the years that followed. But while the Camden Buzzsaw and Commander Evander carried the Cruiserweight Championship for only a combined 3 years, the 2 warriors forever put the fledgling weight class on the map with one of the greatest back and forth Donnybrooks of the modern era. Indeed, a strong case can be made that Holyfield versus Quarry 1 remains the most grueling and action-packed fight in all of cruiserweight history. Okay, there you have it, the fight of the day. Holyfield versus Quarry. Okay, now boxing in Colombia today. Yeah, Colombia is our state for today. Yeah, let's get into that. That's the man called the greatest boxer ever from Colombia, Antonio Cervantes, Kid Pambele, and he's also their first world champion. Yeah. And we're going to talk about him a little bit deeper when we get to the part about the boxers from Colombia. Kid Pambele. Okay. We're boxing in Colombia today. Let's get into it. Okay. Here has everybody today. It's Thursday. Hooked up on another weekend. Tomorrow is going to be the life and career of John Pascal. Forgot his name for a minute there. Yeah, John Pascal from Canada. I think he retired about 2015, something like that. Not a long time ago. But he was mainly light heavyweight, where he did most of his best work. Had a couple of big fights with B-Hop, and he had a war with Bivol. That's what had me thinking before the Bivol-Canelo fight that Bivol could win that one, because I watched this fight with Pascal right before the Canelo fight, and I was like, yeah, this ain't no cherry pick. I mean, everybody might have thought it was, but I was just worried about how the scoring would go. Would they actually give it to Bivol? And they almost didn't. 115, 113. Wow. But it was so dominant, they couldn't take it from him. If Bud has any chance, he's going to have to make it like that to get a decision. Okay, he's going to have to make it like that. So dominant, they can't take it like Bivol did. And they still had the 7 rounds to 5. That was crazy. But let's get into boxing in Colombia now. Okay. Let's see. Bear with me for one moment here. Somebody said Keith Hunter fighting this weekend. Keith the Bounty Hunter. Okay. Well, yeah, that's a pretty good name. But not too much else that I know of. But it's boxing. It's boxing. Okay, boxing in Colombia. Boxing was introduced to Colombia in the late 19th century by Europeans and gained widespread popularity across Latin America in the early 20th century. The sport saw a surge in popularity in Colombia, specifically during the 1960s, with the emergence of successful boxers. Now, some key developments. Boxing's popularity surged in the 1960s, particularly in Colombia's Caribbean and Pacific regions, driven by the success of fighters like Bernardo Carabello and 2-time world junior welterweight champion Antonio Kid Pambele Cervantes. In 1972, Cervantes made history by becoming the first Colombian to win a world boxing title, securing the WBA Junior Welterweight Championship. His achievement inspired a generation of boxers, including Prudencio Cardona, Rodrigo Valdez, Fidel Bassa, and Miguel Happy Lara. The sport is regulated by the National Boxing Commission of Colombia. Later decades saw further Colombian success. Miguel Happy Lara held the WBC bantamweight title from 1985 to 1988. Carlos Jose Tamara won a Pan American Games silver medal. Irene Mamboko Pacheco became an IBF flyweight world champion in the 1990s. And Fulgencio Zuniga won the IBO super middleweight title in the 2000s. Most recently, Yurbahan Martinez earned the silver medal at the 2016 Rio Olympics in the light flyweight division. Okay, so yeah, they've had some good success in the country in boxing. Yeah, because I was going to do Cuba, but then I looked at Colombia. I said, oh, Colombia ain't bad. They got some big names. Antonio Cervantes, Rodrigo Valdez, Miguel Lara, Fulgencio, I forgot Fulgencio's last name. But we're going to come up on Fulgencio again, don't worry. Yeah. Yeah, Fulgencio Cardona. Okay. Happy Laura. Okay. Yeah, Fulgencio Zuniga. That was him. Oh, Fulgencio. Now, some notable figures in Colombian boxing. Key figures in Colombian boxing include, again, Antonio Kid Mamale Cervantes, widely regarded as the country's greatest boxer and a significant figure in Latin American boxing. Billy Charles, the influential founder of the Quadrilatero Gym, and we're going to cover that later too, and a major promoter. Miguel Happy Laura, a former WBC bantamweight champion, Olympic medalist Yubahan Martinez, and world champions Irene Pacheco and Fulgencio Zuniga. Now, important gyms. Yeah, we're going to talk about this gym more in a moment. The Quadrilatero Gym in Barranquilla, founded by Billy Charms, is considered the most important gym in Colombian boxing history and a vital training ground for many boxers. Now, the gym recently reopened after a 3-year closure. Now, boxing's popularity in Colombia and other Latin American countries is linked to its roots in neighborhood culture and narratives of boxers overcoming challenges, often touching upon societal issues like racism and violence. Okay, so now let's talk about this gym they got down there in Colombia, the Quadrilatero Gym, most important gym in the country. Okay, let's take a look at that. Quadrilatero Gym. Okay. All right. Yeah, we're gonna take a look at the Quadrilatero Gym now, down in Colombia. Okay, let me move this closer. There we go. All right. Thursday afternoon, pulled up on another weekend. Wow. This time is flying. There we go. Now, the famous boxing gym reopened after a 3-year closure. Okay. Quadrilatero Gym. That's what it's called. Okay. There's a gym. I don't think that's the Quadrilatero Gym, but that's a gym. Right? Okay. The Quadrilatero Gym has been the most important gym in the history of boxing in Colombia. Now, the venue, located in the city of Barranquilla, had been closed for 3 years from 2014 to 2017, but it reopened, right, its doors to continue writing the history of the sport. A joint effort of the businessman Saul Ballesteros, the promoter Alberto Agamez, and a series of others has allowed the gym to be opened again, both for high-performance fighters and for the general public, right? For fighters and the public. Billy Charms, the most important promoter in the country, in the history of the country, founded the gym and contributed to give great joy to the Colombian boxing community, right? Now, during the reopening ceremony, Ballesteros highlighted the contributions of Charms and his appreciation for what he did. Ballesteros assured that the main reason he put the gym back in operation is to pay tribute to the late promoter and continue to fulfill the dreams of thousands of Colombian boxers. Is it 2 o'clock? Yeah. Former light flyweight contender Robert Barrera worked at the gym with trainer Alberto Mercado during his career. Okay. Now, the WBA celebrated the reopening of this mythical gym and hoped that it would contribute to boost boxing in a country that has produced great warriors such as Kid Pombalay, Happy Laura, Fidel Bassa, among others. Yeah, that was a quadrilateral gym, one of the most important gyms in the entire country, down there in Argentina. Okay, so now let's talk about Kid Pombalay. To be the greatest boxer in the country, and he's also the first world champion from Colombia, Antonio Cervantes. Let's talk about him now. Okay. Looks like 53 years ago, he became the first champion ever in Colombian boxing history. Okay? 53 years ago, Kid Pombalay gave Colombia the first world boxing title. Okay? There he is. Kid Pombalay. It was October 28th, 1972, an unforgettable and historical day for the Colombian boxing. The Nuevo Panama gym was crowded, and Canal people were thrilled and full of joy due to the great moment of the Panamanian boxing. What Panamanian boxing was living, thanks to their 4 WBA world champions. The first world junior welterweight champion, Alfonso Peppermint Frazier, had dethroned the Argentinian Nicolino Loche, an immortal of boxing, on March 10th that same year. Becoming only the 3rd Panamanian champion of history and the first out of 4 in 1972. We're going to get around to what this relates to Colombia in a minute, okay? He defended his world title for the first time against the dangerous Colombian puncher, Antonio Cervantes, Kid Pombalay. Now, Colombia, on the other hand, was trying to win a world boxing title for the 4th time. The first boxer who tried to win it was Bernardo Caraballo from Cartagena, who failed in 2 opportunities. First, he lost to the Golden Bantam of Brazil, Ida Joffre, a terrifying puncher, who knocked him out in 7 rounds at Santa Maria de Bogota Bull Ring Arena on November 11, 1964. Later, on July 4, 1967, he lost by unanimous decision to the Japanese Masahiko Fighting Geraldo, another immortal of the bantamweight division, at the Nippon Budokan in Tokyo, Japan. The 3rd failed attempt was made by Antonio Cervantes himself at Luna Park, Buenos Aires, on December 11, 1971, where he was clearly beaten by the untouchable Nicolino Loche, who shined in front of his country people. It was in Argentina. But October 28th, 1972 came, and on the ring of the Nuevo Panama gym, Peppermint wore his world title for the first time. He began to fight very fast and enthusiastic to defend his title and started to move with grace and talent around the slim Cervantes, who was hunting him from the position. Frazier's technique and speed prevailed in those first rounds in front of the delighted Panamanian fans. They seemed to have everything under control. In Frazier's corner, there were shouts and numerical codes, 532, 428, and Peppermint executed the strategy, impressing the judges, who were the Panamanian Hermario Cedeno, Juan Carlos Tapia, and the referee was Isaac Herrera, who could also vote. Until the 9th round, Frazier was winning on the scorecards. In Cervantes' corner, his Venezuelan agent, Ramiro Machado, and his coach, also from Venezuela, told him he needed to win by knockout since the champion had the advantage on the cards. Thus, Cervantes knocked Frazier down on the canvas, punching him with his left fist. There was terror in the Nuevo Panama gym. Frazier got up with difficulty, but he attacked, hoping to be able to intimidate the Colombian contender. However, Kid Pambalay used again his powerful fist and sent him back down to the canvas again. It was now a matter of time. Other hard-hitting Cervantes left Frazier spread-eagled on the canvas, and Colombia, for the first time, obtained a world boxing title. Yep, that was the first title by Antonio Kid Pambalay Cervantes. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about some other boxers from Colombia now. Some other Colombian boxers. This is boxing in Colombia today. You got like 10 of the best Colombian boxers of all time right now. Okay, and we're gonna start with Kid Pambalay. Again, Antonio Cervantes, there he is. Mike Mazik, what's up, Mike? How are you today? Boxing in Colombia today. We're talking about some boxers from Colombia now. Starting with thought to be the greatest boxer ever from the country, Antonio Kid Pambalay Cervantes. Now, there's no greater boxing hero in Colombia than Cervantes. The reason is simply because he was the best boxer and biggest boxing star to come out of this troubled country. At 5'9", Cervantes was a very tall, light junior welterweight who had power to boot and could box well when needed to. He was, however, mostly an aggressive come-forward fighter, a destroyer. He fought between 1964 and 1983, 19 years in total. He first tried to win the WBA title against Nicolino Los in December of 1971, but lost to the far more experienced and clever Argentinian by unanimous decision. After Los lost the title to Alfonso Frazier, Cervantes challenged and fought him in October 72, fight we just talked about. This time, he was successful, stopping Frazier by a 10th round knockout. In the second defense, he avenged the loss to Los when he stopped Los by a corner retirement in the 9th round. He also stopped Frazier in the rematch by a 5th round TKO. In May of 1975, he beat Esteban de Jesus, the man who took the Rand Zero, by a 15-round unanimous decision in Panama City. He decked de Jesus 3 times. De Jesus had a record of 44 wins, 2 losses coming into that fight. And he was going to win a world title at lightweight, another title, after he lost to Duran. After making his 10th successful defense by stopping the excellent Australian fighter Hector Thompson by a cut in 7 rounds, Cervantes finally lost his world title to the young Wilfred Benitez, losing by a split decision to the much younger Puerto Rican. And Cervantes will always be in the history books because that fight was when Wilfredo Benitez became the youngest ever boxer at 70 years old to become world champion, and his opponent was Antonio Cervantes. So I know he don't want it to be for that reason, but his name will always be in the history books as the loser of that fight when Benitez became the youngest ever champion in boxing history. Yep. Antonio Cervantes was the opponent. So he lost that fight to Benitez. That's when he lost his title, in that fight right there, 1977. But he was successful in recapturing his title again after Benitez moved up. Cervantes beat Carlos Jimenez by 5th round stoppage. Okay? Then he made only 6 successful defenses this time before losing to the young Aaron Pryor by 4th round knockout in August 1980. Cervantes dropped Pryor in the first round. Well, everybody dropped Pryor in the first round, but he always got up and won. Now, Cervantes dropped Pryor in the first round before being overpowered and knocked out. Cervantes finally retired in 1983. He retired with a record of 67 wins, 12 losses, 1 draw, 37 knockouts. He tangled with the best and won more than he lost. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1998. Antonio Cervantes, thought to be the best boxer from Colombia. Okay, boxers from Colombia. Rodrigo Valdez. He has some classic battles with King Carlos Monzon. Rodrigo did. That's Rodrigo on the right. The great Rodrigo Valdez. Okay. The best middleweight from Colombia was Rodrigo Rocky Valdez, Carlos Monzon's toughest opponent and nemesis. Valdez was rather short at just over 5'9", but possessed serious punching power and was a formidable offensive fighter. In May of 1974, he became the first and only guy to stop the Tough Benny Briscoe by 7th round TKO to win the WBC middleweight title, which had been stripped from King Carlos Monzon himself for not fighting Valdez, right? They made 4 defenses, all but one by knockout, and beat Gratian Tunner by 11th round knockout and Asim Max Cohn by 4th round TKO, 2 of the best French middleweights at the time, okay? Previously, he was also the first man to defeat Vinny Curto, a promising technician, by 10th round unanimous decision. And then, when Carlos Monzon finally agreed to fight him, it was bad timing. Valdez's brother had just been killed in a knifing incident just 5 days prior to the fight, which was on June 26, 1976 in Monaco, same place where Valdez had won his WBC title. Therefore, Monzon was relatively comfortably ahead, right? And he also dropped Valdez in the 14th round. They had a rematch on July 30th of the next year, and this time Valdez dropped Monzon in the 2nd round, but Monzon came back to win again by unanimous decision. But after Monzon retired, Valdez again captured the WBC belt on November 5th of that year by beating Benny Briscoe again, this time by unanimous decision. He was however beaten in his first defense by the Argentinian technician Hugo Pastor Coro, who outscored him to win convincingly on all scorecards. That was in April of 1978, and in November, they had a rematch. But by this time, it was clear Valdez was past his prime, and Coro's style was all wrong for him. So the outcome was the same. This time, Coro won even clearer. Valdez had 2 more easy fights in 1980 before retiring at the age of 34. Retired with a record of 63 wins, 8 losses, 2 draws, 43 by knockout. He was stopped only once in his career, and that was early, and that was due to an injury. He died on March 15, 2017 at the age of 71. the great Rodrigo Valdez. Next, we have, these are some boxes from Colombia, our country today. Next, we have Miguel Lora. Miguel Lora. There's Miguel. Known as Miguel Happy Lora. He was the finest technician Colombia ever produced, very likely. He won the WBC bantamweight title in 1985 after beating the future Hall of Famer Daniel Zaragoza by unanimous decision. He then defended against another great fighter, Wilfredo Vasquez, in his first defense. In a thrilling fight where both guys were down once, right? He made 7 defenses in all and beat the former WBC champion Alberto Davila twice, both times by unanimous decision. He also beat the former contender Ray Minas of the Bahamas by unanimous decision, and he stopped Antonio Aguilar by 4th round knockout. Now, Lora lost this title to Raul Perez of Mexico in October of 1988 after 3 years and 2 months as the champion by way of a mostly close unanimous decision. In March of 91, he tried to win the Baker WBO title, but was knocked out by Gabby Canizales in 2 rounds, after first dropping Canizales once in the 2nd round. His last attempt at a world title was in June 1993 when he fought Rafael Del Valle, who had destroyed Duke McKenzie in 1 round to win the WBO title. Lora dropped a clear decision to the undefeated Puerto Rican. He retired after that fight with a record of 37 wins, 3 losses, 17 by knockout. Lora was one of the most elegant boxers of his time, as well as the most clever. Okay. Rene Pacheco, the next boxer from Colombia. There he is. Pacheco. The best flyweight from Colombia, Pacheco won the IBF title in 1999 by stopping Luis Cox Coronado by 9th round TKO. He knocked out Farid Ben Jadal by 4th round knockout in his first defense, and Pedro Pena in 11 rounds in his second. He then beat the former WBU and future IBO champion, Masabele Macapula, who was then 18-0. And Pacheco beat him by majority decision, and that was his 3rd defense. In 2002, he defeated the brother of Fernando Montiel, Alejandro, by unanimous decision. And finally, in his 6th defense, stopped Damian Kelly, a famous amateur, by 7th round TKO. Pacheco would lose his title to a future great, Vic Darkenyan, in a hard-fought fight by 11th round TKO in December 2004. After beating Heriberto Ruiz in an IBF bantamweight eliminator for the number 2 spot and winning the vacant WBO at the Continental bantamweight title by split decision against Leon Moore, he fought the WBO champion, Johnny Gonzalez, on March 30, 2007, and was stopped by 9th round TKO against the younger man by 10 years. He announced his retirement after the fight. His final record was 33 wins, just 2 losses, 24 by knockout. Pacheco was a puncher and a durable fighter, a true brawler. Yeah. Let's see here. 33 wins, 24 by knockout. 72% knockout ratio. Okay. All right. Define Arnie 1. What's up, Define Arnie 1? How are you today? Yeah, boxing in Colombia today. We talking about some boxers from Colombia right now. It's Thursday when we do our trip around the world. Today, Colombia. Boxers from Colombia. Next is Jorge Julio. Jorge Julio. Here's Jorge. Okay. A very talented fighter who won the WBA and WBO bantamweight titles and beat some very good fighters. Julio was the 1988 Olympic bronze medalist at bantamweight, and in 1992, he beat Eddie Cook, who had taken the WBA title by knocking out Israel Contreras. And Julio beat him by unanimous decision. Okay. He made 2 defenses before losing the title to Junior Jones by unanimous decision in October 1993. In 1997, he first won the interim WBA bantamweight title by split decision against Julio Maldonado before winning the full title by stopping Daniel Jimenez by 9th round TKO. Jimenez had also beaten Duke McKenzie in the past and was a 2-time world champion. Julio beat Adonis Cruz and Julio Gamboa on points before losing the title with his 3rd defense to the clever Johnny Tapia by a wide unanimous decision in January 2000 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which was Tapia's hometown. In June of 2002, he tried to win the IBF Super Bantamweight title against the new sensation Manny Pacquiao, but was devastatingly knocked out in 2 rounds for the first time in his career. He also lost his next and last fight by 10th round TKO against Israel Vasquez, a future multiple world champion. Yeah, Israel Vasquez, a future legend. And Julio retired after that fight with a record of 44 wins, 5 losses, 32 by knockout. Okay? Boxers from Colombia. Fidel Bassa. There's Fidel. Fidel Bassa. Another very good flyweight from Colombia. Bassa won the WBA title in 1987 by beating one of the greatest flyweights ever, Hilario Zapata of Panama, by 12th round unanimous decision in his hometown of Barranquilla in Colombia. In his first defense, he impressively stopped the unbeaten future IBF champion Dave McAuley of Northern Ireland by 13th round TKO. He then had a draw against Zapata in his second defense, which was in Panama City. Despite knocking Zapata down once, he was also deducted a point by the referee once. He again beat McAuley in his 4th defense, this time by unanimous decision. He made 6 defenses in all before losing his title to Jesus Kiki Rojas of Venezuela by a very close unanimous decision. It was September 30th, 1989, and the last time Bassa would fight. He was only age 27 when he retired, with a record of 22 wins, just 1 loss, 15 knockouts. Bassa was a very talented guy, and it was a shame he retired so early. He had just 27, man. 23 fights, only 1 loss in his career. We have to look into that and see why he retired so early like that. That was, wow. He was a very successful fighter, too. Okay. Rafael Pinata. There's Rafael. Now, although his time as a world champion was rather brief, Pinata was a very talented fighter who sometimes unfairly got robbed by the judges, mostly when fighting in the United States. A tall junior welterweight at 6 feet, Pinata had awesome power, and he won the IBF title in 1991 by knocking Roger Mayweather out cold in 9 rounds. Before that, He fought against Mark Breland for the WBA welterweight title, but quit in protest in the 5th round, claiming he was thumped. He made one successful defense against unranked Clarence Coleman by 7th round TKO before fighting his greatest rival ever, Pernell Whitaker, July 18, 1992. Pinata was down once and outboxed, but still gave a good effort against the future Hall of Famer and legendary Sweet Pea, who was one of the most clever defensive fighters to exist. In 2001, he stopped Obakar by a 6th round TKO, which was his second best win ever, before fighting Corey Spinks in 2002. Well, he got some big names on his resume. The fight ended suddenly after Spinks got cut by an accidental headbutt, and the scorecards were divided and very close. Spinks winning by technical decision. In his last fight in May 2004, he took on Zab Judah, who was 11 years younger, and gave him a hard fight, but lost by a split decision. That was his final fight, and he retired at the age of 38 with a record of 38 wins, 6 losses, 31 by knockout. Damn, he got one of them Oscar resumes, man. You all hear those names? Zab Judah, Sweet Pea, Mark Breland. Damn, who else was it? Was this the one Manny? No, Manny wasn't. No, that Manny was the one before, but wow. He got an Oscar resume. Man. Yeah, Mark Breland, Roger Mayweather, Zab Judah, Sweet Pea, Corey Spinks, Oba Carr. Wow. Damn, he fought everybody. He had pretty good pop, too. 38 wins, 31 knockouts. That's not bad. %81.5%. Yeah, but wow, that's one of them. Might be better than Oscar. Damn. No, that's not possible. But that was a serious resume he had. Okay, just got a couple more. Ricardo Cardona. Yeah, Ricardo Cardona. There's Ricardo. Right there. Mm-hmm. Wow. Look like Ricardo could use some time in the weight room or something. Damn. Ricardo Cardona from Colombia. Now, Cardona was a super bantamweight, 122. A clever and tall one at 5'8", who won the WBA title in 1978 by beating Soo Hwan Hong by a 12th round TKO in Seoul, South Korea. He defended the title successfully 5 times, last by beating Sergio Victor Palma by 15-round unanimous decision, before losing it to Leo Randolph by a 15-round TKO in Seattle, Washington in 1980. In 1981, he tried to reclaim it against Palmer, who had taken it from Randolph, but was stopped by a 12th round TKO in Buenos Aires. The rest of his career was unsuccessful, and he retired in 1984 after getting stopped by former world champion Jorge Lujan. He retired with a record of 26 wins, 10 losses, 1 draw, 13 knockouts. Cardona died October 12, 2015, age 62. He was elected into the Colombian Sportsman. He was elected the Colombian Sportsman of the Year in 1978. Okay. Next is Ricardo Torres. There's Ricardo Torres. After 3. One of the more recent quality fighters from Colombia, Torres is most famous for his amazingly exciting war with Miguel Cotto in 2005. Torres was a very hard-hitting and capable offensive fighter, but his chin wasn't that good. After going 28-0 with 26 knockouts, He challenged Cotto for the WBO junior welterweight title, and they fought on September 24th, 2005 in an unforgettable fight. He had Cotto down once and hurt him several more times, but he was down himself 4 times, and Cotto stopped him by 7th round knockout. In November 2006, he succeeded in capturing the same title Cotto had vacated, this time against Mike Amadis. And the guy he's fighting was 17-0. He won by a 12-round split decision in Las Vegas. Okay? He made one defense against Arturo Moria by unanimous decision before fighting Kendall Holt in the second and stopping him by 11th round TKO. Torres was down in the 6th round and behind on the scorecards when he pulled off a come-from-behind TKO win by punishing Holt against the ropes. It was in September 2007, and the next year in July, he fought Holt again, who had complained of a premature stoppage. After just 13 seconds, Torres put Holt down with a right hand. He put him down again shortly before Holt hurt him with a left to the body, and their heads then collided, which sent Torres into the ropes injured. Holt then put him down and out with a right hand, and the fight controversially ended after only 1 minute and 1 second. Torres had one more fight in his career, 2009, which he won by a 10th round TKO before retiring, with a record of 33 wins, 2 losses, 29 by knockout. Wow, yeah, that's a great knockout right there. 29 knockouts and 33 wins. 87.8% knockout ratio. Okay. That's the boxers from Colombia. We're looking at Colombia today. Mauricio Pastrana. There's Mauricio. Mostly known for beating Michael Carvajal, Pastrana was a 2-time IBF junior flyweight champion. In January 1997, he won the belt for the first time by defeating Carvajal by a split decision, right? Outlanding him by 44 punches. He then vacated the title in July, but again won it in December by a 3rd round TKO against Manuel Jesus Herrera. He made one defense by 4th round knockout against Ernest Roga before being stripped in his second defense for not making the weight. In 1998, he won the interim WBA flyweight title by unanimous decision against Jose Bonilla. In 2000, he tried to win the IBF bantamweight title, but lost to Jorge Lacerda by a close unanimous decision. After also losing to the next IBF champ, Felix Machado, by unanimous decision in 2001. In 2002, he won the minor IBA bantamweight title by 8th round TKO against Evaristo Primero. He twice challenged the IBA champion, Rafael Marquez, first time going the distance and losing by unanimous decision, and second time getting stopped by the 8th round TKO. In 2007, he fought against the WBA super bantamweight champion, Celestino Caballero, and got stopped by 8th round TKO. He fought until 2012, but was unsuccessful and was retired by Mikey Garcia, who knocked him out in the 2nd round. Yeah, that's it, okay, for the boxers from Colombia. So now, let's see. We have, Antonio Cervantes, the greatest boxer from Colombia, was very underrated fighter. So we're going to look at some other underrated fighters, not necessarily from Colombia, but just some fighters that were underrated over the years that deserve some mentioning. You know, let's take a look at these fighters, some underrated fighters. See if y'all agree. We're gonna look at some. We got 311. Some underrated fighters from over the years. That was all I had on Colombia. So yeah. Okay. we're going to, let's see. Now, over time, certain fighters are forgotten as the sport moves on. And it's important to look back on some of the lesser known boxers of the past and appreciate what they contributed to the sport. If it weren't for the great boxers of the past, the way would not have been paid for those of the present. So let's look at some of these great boxers that's been forgotten, but were great boxers. You don't hear their names like you hear the Floyds and the Mannies and the Sugar Rays and all that kind of stuff. But all these guys were great boxers and deserves mention, okay? Ernesto Marcel. Now, most people remember Marcel as a victim of a Roberto Duran stoppage. Duran was the only person who ever stopped Marcel in his entire career, albeit controversially, in the last round. Now, Duran would have won on the scorecards anyway. Now, Marcel, however, had a very accomplished career that is often overlooked. He was a great inside fighter with good hand speed and mixed it up with good movement. This can be seen in his fight against Duran, right? Now, Antonio Gomez had defeated Antonio Cervantes a few years before he won the WBA featherweight championship in 1971. And he also defeated an unbeaten Esteban de Jesus at 130. He then lost his 126-pound title to Marcel in a 15-round decision. Marcel would successfully defend his title against Gomez in a rematch. In the last fight of his career, Marcel defeated the great Alexis Arguello and retired as featherweight champion. Arguello, as we all know, went on to defeat many great fighters such as Ruben Olivares, Jose Luis Ramirez, Villamar Fernandez, and Ray Mancini, before losing a great battle to Aaron Pryor. Be with me for 1 second. I gotta check something. Okay. How's everybody today? We just looking at some overlooked fighters from the past. That you hardly ever hear their names anymore, but all these guys were great fighters. Okay, be with you in a minute. I just had to check something. I wanted to look at that. He did beat Arguello. Wow. I didn't know Alexis Arguello had ever lost a title in the ring, but he did that last fight. That was for the I don't think that fight was for a title. See, because Alexis didn't lose any in the ring. He moved up. Vacated all his titles. Yeah, that wasn't a title fight. He did beat Arguello in his last fight, but it wasn't a title fight. Yeah, I had to check that right quick. Yeah. The Boxing Menu Podcast. What's up? How are you today? We just look at a different country every Thursday. It was boxing in Colombia today, and now we just looking at some other boxers that don't get the credit. As time goes past, we forget these fighters, but these are just some names that's forgotten, but still were great fighters. What's up, Boxing Menu Podcast? Good to see you. I know everybody, few people are here subscribe to the Boxing Menu Podcast. Great channel. Okay, let's look at another one of these fighters from the past that don't get the credit they deserve. That was Ernesto Marcel. He beat Alexis Arguello in his last fight. I don't think it was for a title, though, no. Arguello didn't lose any titles in the ring. Okay. Sambu Kalambe. That's him on the right. Sambu Kalambe. No. That's Sambu on the left. Yeah. Okay. Sambu Kalambe. The Zairean Italian Kalambe had a great jab. He was also a good defensive fighter with good counterpunching. Unfortunately for Kalambe, he was on the wrong end of a highlight reel first-round knockout against Michael Nunn. Still, Kalambe's resume only makes Nunn's knockout that much more impressive. In 3 consecutive fights, Colombia defeated Harold Graham, won the WBA middleweight title against Iran Barkley, and successfully defended it against one of the most underrated middleweights of all time, the body snatcher, Mike McCallum. He beat Harold Graham, Iran Barkley, and the body snatcher Mike McCallum back to back to back. This guy Colombia did, okay? Right after that, he defended his title against solid competition in Robbie Sims, Bobby Hagler's brother, and Doug DeWitt, before losing to Michael Nunn. After losing a rematch to Mike McCallum in a split decision in 1991, he would defeat Graham a second time before beating Steve Collins. That would remain the last loss of Collins' career, okay? You be just talking about some fighters that don't get the mentioning and credit they deserve, okay? Azuma Nelson. There's Azuma on the left. Azuma Nelson. Nelson is fairly well known within the boxing community, but even then, many people don't realize how good he really was because of his defeat to Pernell Whitaker. Nelson was a great all-around boxer with power, but he could still make it through a brawl if he had to, like that fight with Salvador Sanchez in the early 80s. Nelson was unknown then, and when I think Sanchez stopped him in like the 14th round. Pat Caldwell was an underrated boxer that gave the great Salvador Sanchez a tough fight and lost a close split decision. Azuma Nelson knocked Caldwell out in just one round. Styles do make fights, but for Nelson to knock Caldwell out in one round is still a huge accomplishment. Nelson also fought Sanchez himself and lost a 15th round. Although he was stopped in the 15th round, it was a difficult fight for Sanchez. They had him behind on one of the scorecards. A loss is a loss, but many fighters have shown their greatness in defeat, such as Holyfield against Bo and Jersey Joe Walcott against Rocky Marciano. Azuma Nelson proved the same in his defeat against Salvador Sanchez. Okay? Nelson also knocked out Wilfredo Gomez and Jeff Finnick and has proven himself as the greatest boxer to come out of the African continent. Okay? These are just some boxers that are underrated. You know, don't get the credit they deserve. Young Corbett III. We go back a ways. Young Corbett III. Here's Young Corbett III. Okay? One of Young Corbett the first and second was boxers. I think he took that from honor to honor a boxer. Yeah. But anyway, there's very little footage of Corbett, but he did appear to have great hand speed and a good inside game in his fight against Jackie Fields. We can get a better grasp of how skilled he was by looking at his accomplishments as a fighter. Okay? On his way to the welterweight title, Corbett had to defeat Seferino Garcia twice. This is the same Seferino Garcia that Henry Armstrong defeated to win the welterweight title in 1938. Excuse me. Shortly after beating Garcia, Corbett defeated Jackie Fields and took his welterweight title. Corbett then jumped up one weight class to middleweight. See, we had the juniors and supers then, so it jumped from welterweight to middleweight. That was one class. Corbett then jumped up one class to middleweight and defeated one of the greatest middleweights of all time in the toy bulldog, Mickey Walker. Beat him. He also defeated another all-time great boxer, Billy Conn, even knocking him down. Right? Now, Billy Conn would go on to give Joe Louis one of his most difficult fights of his career before getting knocked out in the 13th round. And he had Joe Louis beat. We did that on our Friday today, remember? He got greedy and tried to slug it out with Joe Louis and got knocked out, but he was giving him a boxing lesson through 12 rounds. We talked about it. One of the murderous road fighters, Holman Williams. Hardly ever hear about Holman, but he was a great fighter. Holman Williams. Williams was a slick fighter with great footwork and a good jab. One of Williams' greatest rivals was another defensive master in Charlie Burley. Burley is another extremely underrated boxer, and we will get to him shortly. Williams would go 3-3 with one no contest in his 7 fights against Burley. Williams also defeated the great middleweight Jose Basora in Sugar Ray Robinson's prime during his first 131 fights. Basora was one of the only 3 people to fight Ray Robinson and not lose. Right? I think it was a draw. Henry Brim and Basora fought him to a draw. Yeah, draw. And LaMotta was the only man to defeat Sugar Ray. Williams was also undersized when he went up against Lloyd Marshall, another very underrated fighter that we will examine. After splitting his first 2 meetings with Marshall, Burley would win the rubber match. Now, Holman would then achieve one of his greatest accomplishments when he defeated the all-time great light heavyweight, Archie Moore, despite barely weighing more than a middleweight. And then this is the great Charlie Burley. They say Sugar Ray Robinson ducked this man. You see, anybody ever seen this man on tape? This man was like a ghost when he was fighting, man. Like he'd be in front of you, then he would just disappear, you know. Be on the side, and he was like a ghost, man, when he was fighting. It was amazing. Y'all gotta watch Charlie Burley. But Charlie Burley, very underrated, and never fought for a title, but still in International Boxing Hall of Fame. Okay, never fought for a title. One of the biggest travesties in boxing history. Now, as mentioned before, Burley was another very underrated fighter, just like his rival Holman Williams. Like Williams, Burley was an amazing defensive fighter. I told you he was like a ghost in the ring. The short amount of Burley's footage against Billy Smith is a great exhibition of defensive and counterpunching mastery. You can even see traces of a prime Roy Jones in his style. Even outside, well, you see Roy Jones and Charlie Burley was first. Even outside of Holman Williams, Burley had a career stacked with great accomplishments. 2 of Burley's biggest wins came against Fritzy Zivik in 1938 and 1939. Zivik would go on to defeat Henry Armstrong twice in 1940 and 1941 to take his welterweight title. Burley also defeated Jack Chase 3 times. In between his losses to Burley, Jack Chase defeated the great Archie Moore at middleweight. Archie Moore would avenge his loss to Chase and shortly after fight Burley himself. And Archie Moore said Burley was the best fighter he ever fought. Burley ended up dropping Moore 4 times in a lopsided decision. In case anyone has forgotten, this is the same Archie Moore who cemented himself as one of the greatest light heavyweights of all time. And when he was almost 40 years old and completely past his prime, gave serious problems to a heavyweight like Rocky Marciano, even dropping him. In almost 100 fights, Burley was never stopped once. Burley's accomplishments are nothing short of unbelievable, especially since he was so often a smaller man in his fights. Once Burley faced a not-so-elite fighter by the name of J.D. Turner, but the small middleweight Burley was outweighed by almost 70 pounds. Burley stopped Turner in the 7th round. The man outweighed him by almost 70 pounds, but he still stopped him. Lloyd Marshall. Get a chance, look up some tape of Charles Burley. BBO Sports TV in the building. He did BBO. Sugar Ray would not fight him. Sugar Ray gonna try to blame it on his manager. You the fighter. Some of his manager. No. You can't blame it on the manager. If you want to fight, get rid of the manager and get you another manager. Sugar Ray didn't want that fight. You're 100% right, BBO. He was terrified of Charles Burley. Yeah, BBO. I was telling him, Charles Burley was like a ghost when you fight the man. He'd be right there in front of you. All of a sudden, he just disappeared. This man was incredible. Charles Burley. A couple more. Oh Lord, run in my mouth and I hit the button. Bear with me for a moment, please. It was BVO's fault. Salute BVO. Okay, now where we? Charles Burley, right, was last. Way down there. Yeah, there's Charles Burley. Lord Marshall was next. Another murderous road fighter, Lord Marshall. Yeah. Okay. Lord Marshall. Now, Marshall was mentioned earlier as one of Holman Williams' best wins, but Marshall was a highly accomplished boxer in his own right. Marshall, like Holman Williams and Charlie Burley, was a great counterpuncher, and he also had a good blend of speed and power. All three were part of the murderous road fighters of the 40s. One of his biggest wins came against Charlie Burley in a match where Marshall knocked him down. Yeah, nobody would fight these guys, so they had to fight each other. They had like 30, 40, combined between them 30, 40, 50 fights against each other. This group of 8 fighters, nobody else would fight them. Probably more than that, Yeah, fought each other a lot. And one of Marshall's biggest wins came against Burley in a fight where Marshall knocked Burley down. Now, Burley never got stopped, but he had been on the mat. Now, shortly after that, he knocked out one of the all-time great light heavyweights, Ezzard Charles, in a fight where Ezzard Charles was knocked down repeatedly. This guy stopped Ezzard Charles, Lord Marshall. That's why when these people would fight these murderous road fighters, they would stipulate that the title is not on the line. If they did fight them, they would not put the title on the line against these people because they wanted to keep their title, Now, Marshall would also defeat Jake LaMotta, known as the only man to defeat a prime Sugar Ray Robinson. Marshall would then avenge his earlier loss to Holman Williams before losing in the immediate rematch. Right after his loss, however, he bounced back with extremely impressive back-to-back wins over Dewey Maxim and Jack Chase, another murderous road fighter. Now, Jimmy Bivens, one of the most underrated boxers of all time. Jimmy Bivens, yeah. Hardly hear Jimmy Bivens' name. His name should be mentioned like Sugar Ray and Joe Louis and Rocky Ezzard Charles, but you hardly ever hear Jimmy Bivens' name. This man was bad. In only his 15th fight, Jimmy Bivens, that's Jimmy on the left. In only his 15th fight, Jimmy Bivens defeated Charlie Burley. In only his 15th fight. And I'm just talking about how great Charlie Burley was. This man was still basically a prospect and beat Charlie Burley. Shortly after beating a young Joey Maxim, the dangerous slugger Jimmy Bivens beat a prime Ezzard Charles in a match where Charles was knocked down 3 times. And you hardly ever hear Jimmy Bivens' name now, but this man was just as good as all of them. He beat Ezzard Charles, knocked him down 3 times. Ezzard Charles has just won 2 fights apiece over both Charlie Burley and Joey Maxim, in addition to knocking out Jose Basora. Bivens would then go on to knock out Lord Marshall and Archie Moore, both at light heavyweight. He remained undefeated until he ran into Jersey Joe Walcott, losing a split decision and perhaps his only chance at a title fight. And that was at heavyweight, right? This man was not a heavyweight, but he was daring to be great. It's another one nobody would give a title shot. They were scared of him. Bivens would never get a title shot due to the politics of the time. And even Joe Louis questioned why Bivens didn't get such an opportunity. Yeah, Jimmy Bivens, probably the most underrated name on this list. Yeah. Go back and check him out, Jimmy Bivens. Okay? Bad man. Yeah. Stopped Ezzard Charles, knocked him down 3 times. Yeah, that's his name right there. Check him out and let me know what you think. Okay. Final one. Sammy Engert, another very underrated fighter. Yeah, that's Sammy right there. Sammy Engert. Now, Engert's style was not the most pleasing. His nickname of the Clutch being due to his tendency to hold and wrestle, but he must have been doing something right, looking at his accomplishments. One of the earliest wins came against Petey Saran, who had not lost a fight since losing his featherweight title to the great Henry Armstrong. Angat went on to win the lightweight title against Lou Jenkins. Shortly after that, he became the first man to defeat the greatest defensive fighter of all time, Willie Pep. Okay? And let me tell you about Willie Pep. Remember I told you Willie Pep won the first 63 fights of his career, right? First 62 fights of his career. Lost one, then he won the next 72. He was 134-1 at one point. Guess who that one loss was against? The man on the screen right there, Sammy Angat. He was the only one to beat Willie Pep in 135 fights Willie Pep had. Sammy Angat was his only defeat. Okay? So, yeah. Angat would later on TKO Ike Williams, who most boxing fans regard as the greatest lightweight of all time. Okay? Lou Ambers. That was a great underrated fighter. Lou Ambers. Ambers was a very good inside fighter, as proven in his battles with Henry Armstrong, the greatest inside fighter of all time. One of his biggest wins came early in his career against the Coco Kid. Kid is another underrated fighter who defeated the likes of Homer Williams and Jack Chase. Could have been on this list. Now, Ambers faced one of his biggest challenges against Fritzy Zivik when he suffered a broken jaw. He found a way to pull through and overcame his injury to win a decision. Later on in Ambers' career, Tony Canzoneri, one of the greatest lightweight boxers and pound-for-pound fighters in the history of the sport of boxing, defeated Ambers to win the lightweight title. Ambers would win back his title from Canzoneri and successfully defended against Canzoneri in their third and final meeting. After avenging another one of his losses to Pedro Montanez to win the lightweight title again, Ambers would take on the great Henry Armstrong, losing his title once more in a split decision. As he did with Canzoneri and Montanez, Ambers found a way to come back and avenge his defeat and won back his lightweight title from the second greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time, Henry Armstrong. An honorable mention for some underrated fighters. Honorable mention. Ayub Kalule, Mike McCallum, Carlos Palomino, Tiger Flowers, Benny Briscoe, Rodrigo Valdez, Nino Benvenuti, Dick Tiger, Jack Chase, the Coco Kid, Randy Turpin, Bojack, Jose Basora, Kid Gavilan, Perry Wills, and the great Marcel Cerdan. Okay, let's put the link in. I got something else too. If nobody hits the link, I got a list of the greatest, since we was in Colombia now, 10 of the greatest Latin American fighters of all time. Okay, 10 of the greatest Latin American fighters of all times. All times. Okay, let's see. It's Thursday. Tomorrow is the life and career of damn, I forgot. Anybody remember? Oh man. Oh, it's right here. Let me see. John Pascal, great Canadian fighter, tomorrow. Yeah, John Pascal. That's who we're going to be talking about tomorrow. He was a great he fought B-Hop twice. He fought had a great fight with Bivol. That was around, yeah. He ain't been too long retired, at all. 15-ish, 16-ish, I think. But it hasn't been too long at all. That Pascal been out the game. Nope. Yeah. But how's everybody doing this hump? Miss Thursday, hump day is gone. Yeah, man, what did I do? Bear with me. I keep hitting stuff that I ain't trying to hit. Here we go. Get in there, Link. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and I got 10 of the greatest Latin American fighters too. Let's see if I can put that, get that in here. Talk about that. It's about Panamanian. Mhm. Okay. Give me one moment, please. Get this going. We're going to talk about 10 of the greatest Latin American fighters in history. 10 of them. Since we was in Colombia today. Now, Cuba going to be next Thursday. That's going to be a good one. You know, Cuba got a great boxing history, amateur and pro. Great boxers come out of there. We got a whole bunch of great former Cuban boxers, amateurs, and current. David Morrell, Obese. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that is going to be good. Next Thursday, Cuba. Okay, let's talk about these Latin American legends. Latin American legends. Oh my goodness. Man. Yeah, that ain't too bad. Turn the light out. Okay. Yeah, let me try something else very quick. Very quick. Got like 20 minutes left for today. So, okay. Oh my goodness. I'm messing up. Okay, almost there. Latin American boxing legends. Okay, let's talk about these Latin American boxing legends now. Okay. We don't need that. Pull it out. Yeah, don't leave it in there long. I'd rather talk about the Latin American boxing legends anyway. Okay, we got 10 of them. We got no pictures. Now, Latin America is known for its passion for soccer and baseball. But the region has also produced some of the most formidable talents in the boxing world. From thunderous punches to masterful footwork, Latin American fighters have left an indelible mark on the sport. But among the many champions who truly deserve to be called legends, we're going to take a look at the defining moments of 10 boxing icons who have earned their place in the pantheon of Latin American legendary greatness. Okay. With Kid Palmele back there. That's the greatest fighter out of Colombia, there, Antonio Cervantes. All right. Julio Cesar Chavez, the great Mexican boxing champion. Okay. Among some legendary Latin American fighters. KCC. This Mexican boxer heads the list with 37 powerful reasons. In other words, his fights defending or trying to conquer a world title. No other boxer has ever done this. Chavez became a 5-time world champion in 3 categories. Super featherweight, junior featherweight, and welterweight. He won his first 91 fights and spent 13 years, 11 months, 24 days undefeated. All in all, he won 107 out of 115 fights with 86 knockouts, right? Incredible. 107 fights, and he still got over 80% knockout ratio, 80.3%. That's incredible. Okay, next, King Carlos Monzon, the Iron Argentinian. King Carlos. We're just talking about some other great Latin American fighters since we was on Colombia today. King Carlos Monzon. Monzon joins the list of great Latin American fighters, legends that had a tragic end. This Argentinian fighter was a middleweight world champion between 1970 and 1977. He defended his crown in 14 fights and prevailed over the best boxers at the time, from Emil Griffith to Benny Parrott, Benny Briscoe, and Cuban Jose Butter Napales. He totaled 87 wins and 3 defeats. In 1990, he was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And according to the Ring magazine, he occupies the 11th position among the best boxers of all time, pound for pound. And he did not lose the last 13 years of his career. King Carlos Monzon. Now, away from the ring, Monzon left a sad image because he murdered his couple, his girlfriend, and was sentenced to spend 11 years in prison. In 1995, during a work session, he died in a car accident. He was out on furlough. We're talking about some of the greatest Latin American fighters of all time. The explosive thin man, Alexis Arguello, Nicaragua. Well, Thomas Hill in the building. What's up, T. Hill? How are you today? Luke, we did Colombia today, so we're talking about some of the greatest Latin American fighters of all time today, right now, to close it out. The explosive thin man, Alexis Arguello. Arguello has been Nicaragua's best boxer of all time and one of the top fighters in the region. His end was also tragic. The Nicaraguan fighter won 3 world titles in 3 different categories. Featherweight, 1974 to 77, super featherweight, 1978 to 1980, and lightweight, 1981 to 1983. He won 82 out of 90 fights, 65 of which finished with knockout. After his retirement, he became a politician. And in 2008, he was appointed mayor of Managua, Nicaragua, the country's capital. In 2009, the country was shocked when the news came out the idol had taken his own life. Shot himself in the heart. Wow. Okay. He had 82 wins with 65 knockouts. That's 79.2%, hovering right around 80. Okay, talking about some of the top 10 Latin American fighters of all time. Nakes, the Hands of Stone. Roberto Duran, Panama. Roberto Duran, Panama. This Panamanian legend spent 33 years in the ring, 1968 to 2001. Only one of 2 fighters to fight in 5 decades, along with Jack Johnson. His nickname, Hands of Stone, or Manos de Piedras, speaks high of the punches delivered by this man that became world middleweight champion after defeating lightweight champion after defeating Ken Buchanan in 1972. Welterweight against Sugar Ray Leonard in 1980 in the so-called Montreal, the Brawl for It All in Montreal. Junior middleweight against Davey Moore in 1983. And then he was at middleweight against Iran Barkley in 1989. His long career included 103 wins, 70 knockouts, and 16 losses. In 1999, the Associated Press labeled Duran as the 7th fighter in the top boxers of the 20th century. Number 7. Wow. Okay, we talking about the top 10 Latin American fighters of all time. Next is Wilfredo Bazooka Gomez from Puerto Rico. Bazooka. Okay. This amazing Puerto Rican fighter was named amateur world champion in the event hosted by Havana in 1974. He was only 18 years old at the time. He later joined the pro realm, and after the first attempt, he won 32 fights in a row, all by knockout, thus joining the select list of fighters with 20 or more consecutive knockout wins. In 1977, he conquered the super bantamweight world title given by the WBC, after defeating South Korean Dong Kyung Young in Puerto Rico. 12th round knockout. Gomez held his title through 1983 and defended the title in 17 fights, all by knockout. Okay? All by knockout. The list of beaten opponents on Bazooka's resume includes such world champions as Leo Cruz, Ron Meza, Lupe Pintor, and Carlos Zarate. The Puerto Rican fighter retired in 1989. He put an end to his pro career with 44 wins, 42 by knockout, just 3 defeats and 1 draw. And he was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1995. Wilfredo Bazooka Gomez. Okay? And that knockout rate is off the chain, man. Wow. 42 knockouts and 44 wins. 95.4%. Wilfredo Gomez. The legendary Wilfredo Gomez. Okay, we're looking at the top 10 Latin American boxers of all time. Felix Tito Trinidad. Tito, Puerto Rico. Tito is considered one of the best boxers of all time in Puerto Rico. At the age of 17, he began to fight as a pro, and he was a world champion 3 years later. He conquered the title in 3 different categories for different organizations such as the IBF, WBA, and the WBC. Okay? One of his most famous wins took place against Oscar De La Hoya in 1999. He finished his career with 42 wins, 3 losses, 35 knockouts. That ain't bad. 35 and 42 wins. That's 83.3% for Tito. Felix Tito Trinidad. Okay. Next, top 10 Latin American fighters of all time. Teofilo Stevenson from Cuba. Stevenson has been the best 4-weight in the history of amateur boxing. His numbers were spectacular. In 2 decades on the ring, he won 301 out of 321 fights. He collected 72 gold medals, No. 6 silvers and 2 bronze medals. His 3 Olympic titles, 3 golds. I'm talking about 7. Well, overall in the amateurs, not Olympics. 72 overall in the amateur. I give it say 72 Olympic gold medals. How many Olympics was he in? But that's amateurs total. Other tournaments, not just the Olympics, right? Can you possibly get 72 gold medals in the Olympics? Damn, that's a lot of Olympics. But anyway, yeah, 3 in the Olympics. He's only one of 4. One of 3 three-time gold medalists. Yeah. Him, Felix Savon of Cuba, and Laszlo Papp of Hungary all got 3 gold medals in boxing. Okay. And Felix Savon from Cuba makes it. Okay. That's an amateur. Now, the Cuban fighter is described as the most prize-winning amateur boxer of all time. Savon left hard-to-match marks. 3 Olympic titles, Barcelona 92, Atlanta 96, Sydney 2000. Teofilos was 72, 76, and 80. Munich, Montreal, and Moscow. And there's no way of writing the history of Cuban boxing without mentioning Felix Savon. He was not a technical fighter, but he certainly knew how to combine jabs with right straight punches, along with hooks to the stomach, with the power to break any defensive strategy prepared by his rival. He did not forget. We cannot forget that Savon lived in the age of super protection for amateur boxers with head protectors and gloves prepared to prevent the damage of the athlete's anatomy. Okay. How many more we got? Okay, we got 2. Well, yeah, we got 2 more, I think. Yeah, 2 more. Top 10 Latin American fighters of all time. Marco Antonio Barrera, Mexico. This Mexican fighter stood out as an amateur, and he jumped into the pro ranks when he was 15 years old. He conquered 7 world titles in 3 different weight classes. He got his first title as a super bantamweight, 122, given by the World Boxing Organization in 1995 after defeating Puerto Rican Daniel Jimenez. In 2001, Barrera won the title at featherweight, IBO, against British boxer Nassim Hamed. And in 2004, he was given the super featherweight title by the WBC after beating Paulie Ayala. He totaled 58 wins and 9 defeats, 44 knockouts. And finally, rounding out the top 10 best Latin American fighters of all time is Juan Manuel Marquez of Mexico. Marquez is one of the 5 Mexican boxers that have won world titles in 3 different weight classes. The other names are Fernando Montiel, Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, and Julio Cesar Chavez. Let's see. Has Canelo done it now? I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyway, Marquez's 19-year career in the ring included 8 titles with different organizations, and the ring handpicked him as one of the best boxers pound for pound. Among the fiercest rivals we can mention was Filipino Manny Pacquiao, who faced him in 4 fights, won 2 of them, 1 defeat and a tie. Moreover, Marquez fought and lost against Floyd Mayweather Jr. All in all, the Mexican boxer won 56 fights, lost 7, 40 knockouts. There you have it. Top 10 Latin American fighters of all time. Because we was in Colombia today. Tomorrow is the life and career of John Pascal. Okay? Appreciate everybody for coming through today. Join me tomorrow for another Cast Sports. Okay, everybody have a great afternoon.